New York City, Manhattan. The dim glow of streetlights barely pierced through the thick fog. It was around 2 a.m. when Thomas Gray, a 32-year-old programmer living on the 10th floor of an old building on Lexington Avenue, woke up to a strange noise. It was a scream, a woman's scream, piercing and full of terror. Thomas walked to the window and looked outside. On the corner of the street, he saw her. A woman stood frozen, seemingly paralyzed by fear. There was no one else around, but something about her posture made his skin crawl. He grabbed his phone and dialed 911.
911, what's your emergency? The dispatcher's voice was calm.
This is Thomas Gray. I live at 242 Lexington Avenue. I see a woman on the street. Something's wrong. She's not moving, but she looks like she's seeing something.
At that moment, the woman's head jerked upward, directly toward Thomas's window. Her face was grotesquely elongated, her eyes were dark pits, and her mouth stretched into a silent scream.
She's looking at me, Thomas yelled into the phone.
Dispatcher tried to calm him, but Thomas couldn't hear. The woman vanished. Seconds later, something moved in the alley near the corner. Thomas squinted to see a man stumbling through the shadows. He looked disheveled, panicked. Suddenly, a figure emerged from the darkness. It wasn't the woman. It was something else, massive, with elongated limbs and claws like razor blades. The man screamed, but the creature was on him in an instant. Thomas watched in horror as it opened its maw and sank its teeth into the man's neck. Blood sprayed across the wall.
You have to listen to me. Something is killing people, Thomas shouted into the phone.
The creature turned its head toward his window as if it heard him. Thomas stumbled backward in terror.
Stay inside. Officers are on their way, the dispatcher said.
Then he heard it, a faint rustling sound behind him, the door to his apartment. Slowly, he turned around. The lock began to twist, even though the door was bolted from the inside.
Thomas, please remain calm. Stay on the line, the dispatcher urged.
The door suddenly stopped rattling, the lock going still. Thomas froze, hoping it was just his imagination. But then a new sound emerged, the slow scrape of claws against the floor. Not in the hallway, inside.
How is it inside? He gasped, his voice barely audible.
Sir, is there someone in your apartment? Do you see anyone? The dispatcher asked.
It's not a person, he whispered.
The scraping continued, growing louder, closer. Thomas pressed himself against the wall, clutching the phone to his ear. The room seemed to grow darker, as if the light itself had fled.
It's hunting me, he said, his voice breaking.
Suddenly, something heavy thudded against the living room floor. He could hear the creature moving slowly, deliberately. The silence was broken only by the sound of deep, raspy breathing.
I'm not breathing. I can't breathe. Thomas whispered into the phone, trying not to make a sound. You're cutting out, he stammered. Then the phone went dead.
At that moment, the creature stopped moving. Its breathing grew louder, more deliberate. Thomas knew it had found him. He tried to hide behind the couch, but before he could take a step, clawed hands shot out from the shadows, slashing the air inches from his face. He stumbled and fell, scrambling to get away.
Please, someone help, he screamed into the void.
Out of the darkness, a voice emerged, low and hissing, like wind howling through an abandoned house. The creature began to toy with him, disappearing into the shadows only to reappear closer and closer each time. Thomas darted around the apartment, heart pounding, unable to find an escape. He turned to the window, but outside was nothing but thick fog and an endless void. Suddenly, the creature was right in front of him. Its eyes were dark, bleeding pits, and its mouth twisted into an impossible grin. Thomas screamed, but the sound was cut short as claws tore into his chest. When the police arrived, they found the apartment in chaos. Blood smeared the walls and deep claw marks scored the floor. But Thomas was gone. The only sound that remained was a faint whisper echoing from the empty room. You are mine.